welcome back to my channel. My name is Brittany Bundles, and today I really want to touch on one of the downsides of running and operating a hair business, and that is receiving bad batches of hair from your vendor. Now, I was inspired to make this video because one of my subscribers reached out to me. She explained her story and her circumstance, and pretty much she'd been working with this vendor for a very long time, and the vendor had just been very inconsistent, but she wasn't really fully wholeheartedly in her business. So she would order and then she would, kind of get discouraged and stop working her business and then order more. And, some things would come up and she would find herself not as involved in the business. And so she's been selling hair for a number of years, but it hasn't been consistent. So recently she decided to be more consistent. She decided to devote her time and her energy into her business, and went back to the vendor that she had always been working with. And the vendor was inconsistent, meaning that the vendor always sent out the hair. I'm trying to remember exactly, but the vendor always sent out the hair on time. But the hair quality would be different. And so it was just very inconsistent, and it's really hard to run a business when you don't have consistency. And so she wasn't able to really offer her customers consistency with her product because her vendor wasn't offering her consistency with their product. You know what I mean? So I wanted to touch on this and make a video about this because I feel like a lot of people may experience this. Ultimately, like I say in a lot of videos, I strongly recommend having at least two vendors. You don't have to use both vendors all the time, but it's always better to just have another option. It's always better to make sure that you're protecting yourself and your business. Everything can be going smooth with your vendor. Everything could be working amazing, but it only takes one time, you know what I mean? And if you're running a business and if you have customers that are expecting you to deliver, and if you have a brand that you want to uphold and a reputation that you're wanting to, keep in good standing, then you do want to make sure that everything is okay and right on the back end. And so my opinion and my recommendation would always be to have two vendors. Yes, you'd probably have one that's primary. That's what I would recommend, having one that you typically work with, but then another for backup, just in case, So, this is what I want to go over. The first tip that I have is closely inspect your hair and go through the entire bundle. Yes, I do mean all bundles. So, a lot of times when we receive our inventory in the mail, if you open up the first bundle and you notice that, hey, this doesn't really look too good, whether the ends look damaged, whether the hair just doesn't look healthy, whether the wefts aren't constructed properly, whatever the case may be, if it just doesn't look like how the other bundles looked in the past and it just doesn't look up to your standard, you don't want to send it out. You'd be embarrassed to send it out and put your name or your label on it. Don't assume that all of the bundles in that package are damaged or a bad batch. You know what I mean? Individually inspect all of your hair. Sometimes a vendor will, sometimes, I don't know. So I don't want to say purposely and I don't want to say accidentally, but I do know that some vendors will send out different grades of hair. I've gotten so many emails about that where their vendors have sent out like a 5A bundle and with their 9A hair. And some people say that grades really don't matter, but they do. In my opinion. So, a lot of companies have different grades of hair that they offer. They have different type of hair, different quality of hair. And so I would recommend inspecting every single bundle because, like I said, just because you received one bundle or a few bundles that were not of good quality doesn't mean that the whole inventory is just ruined. So you do want to take your time and look at your inventory and actually inspect all of your bundles individually and have your own inspection process to make sure that you're running as efficient and as smooth as you possibly can. Now, the next tip that I would go over is identify why the hair is bad. So, so often we say something is wrong or bad and we don't even know why. It's really hard to communicate to your vendor why you are wanting a refund or why you are wanting other bundles if you don't first understand why it is you're wanting more bundles. When you find a vendor to work with your business, just understand how important it is to find a vendor that you can work with. It's not about finding the cheapest vendor. It's not about finding the vendor that has the largest bundle. It's not about finding the vendor that has the most popular name. It's really about finding a vendor that has your total package. And although we are going to have to make some sacrifices and, you have to negotiate, give and give a little bit, you may not receive every single thing that you want in a vendor, but you want to make sure that the vendor that you decide to work with pretty much is that total package for you. So not just the price point, not just the textures that they offer, but also how their communication skills are with you, how their business problem solving skills are with you. Because if you think about it, things are going great 9 times out of 10, you don't have any issues. Your vendor's happy, you're happy, everything's great. But it's that one time where something doesn't go well, you still want to be able to go back and have an open conversation and say, hey, I spent this much money. I'm not able to sell this. And so what can we do to make sure that we both can continue to profit? If I send out this hair and my customers, are not happy with it, which I'm not even going to send it out because I'm not happy with it. But say that I did, how will that affect your sales? If I'm not getting sales, if no one's wanting to repurchase from me because of this hair, how is that going to affect you? So it's really just about communicating and bringing it to your vendor's attention. But like I said, just because you open up one bundle does not mean that the whole inventory, all of the bundles that you received are bad. Really take your time and look through all of them and then identify why it's bad. So is it bad because the ends are looking really frayed and dead and split? Is it bad because the wefts are not constructed to your liking? Is it bad because you can just tell the luster of the hair isn't there? It just doesn't look like the other bundles typically look. Is it bad because you can tell that the grade is completely different than the grade that you typically are sent? Why is it bad? We have to be able as business owners to look at our bundles and see exactly what the issue is. Even with your customers, if a customer sends you a picture of hair, you have to, it's really good to develop a skill of being able to look and identify and understand the product that you're selling. Okay, this may be why this is happening, or this may be what we can do to rectify it. But if you don't know, if you're just looking and saying, well, I don't know, it looks different. It takes more than that. Even if you are wanting to dispute a transaction, it's going to be a little bit more difficult to do that, especially if you have received the package and if you have already opened the hair and if you're running your fingers through it and things like that and testing it. But there's still ways, There's still ways, but you have to, like I said, first understand and be able to articulate why you're saying that the bundles are bad. So get into the habit of inspecting your bundles and not just trusting your vendor to send out the correct bundles, but really make sure that you are looking at every single bundle and that you're not getting just wrapped up in the movement of getting bundles, putting them in a bin and shipping them out. You do want to make sure that you're taking time, not skipping over any steps, and making sure to the best of your ability that all of your customers are getting great quality hair, because it is going to fall back on you, not your vendor. Now, the next thing that I want to go over is it may be tricky to dispute if you receive the product, and that's why picking a good vendor is so important. So I kind of touched on that. When you receive hair, hair is it's such a, I don't want to say touchy item, but it's not the easiest to dispute. Even if you say you bought hair off of Amazon, or say you bought hair off of eBay, or you bought hair through PayPal, you have to be able to explain why you didn't receive what the vendor sent out. And so that's why I said it's so important to be able to identify, look at your hair and inspect your hair. And then it's really important to not only be able to identify, but also have a relationship with your vendor, because 9 times out of 10, those platforms are just going to go off of what you sent. Well, you ordered hair and you got hair. That's that. The dispute is canceled. The vendor won because, like I said, you ordered hair and you got hair. But having that relationship with the vendor is going to give you more room to actually go a little bit further and say, yes, I ordered hair. We both know that. But the hair that I received is not up to our standards. So what can we do to rectify this? And a lot of times, instances like this is where you're going to really find out the true integrity of your vendor. Like I said before, if everything is going smooth, then 9 times out of 10, everything's going to be smooth. You're not going to have any issues with your vendor's not going to have any issues with you. But the moment that you say something, the moment that something goes wrong is really, in my opinion, how you can really test the integrity of your vendor. And really be able to say, hey, is this somebody that I want to work with going forward? I've worked with vendors in the past that just did not have integrity. I thought everything was going great. And, if I contact them about something or I had a concern or a question, it just, I was able to see their true colors. And I'm like, wow, I wish I would have saw this up front. And so some vendors are really, really nice to work with. Some vendors understand where you're coming from and they understand business and they respect business, because they understand if you send out something that isn't to your standard or to the quality that they guaranteed or that they told you that you would have, then the sales may slow down on your end, because if customers aren't liking what they're receiving, then what's going to happen? They're not going to purchase. And so if they're not purchasing, then what's going to happen? You may be stagnant in business and may not need to order again from your vendor. And so some vendors will understand that. But like I said, even if you're not able to dispute it, because it's going to be very hard to dispute you receiving bad batches of hair, because like I said, a lot of companies are just going to look at the fact that you received what you paid for, and that's that. And they're going to direct you to the vendor anyway. So you do want to make sure that you're building up that reputation, asking questions up front, and making sure that you're working with someone that cares about your business just as much as you do, and also cares about their business, because the better that the better you do, the more money they're going to receive. Now, the next thing that I want to go over is if you do have bad ends, some vendors will recommend cutting off the ends. However, that will affect the lengths, and the quality may not be up to your standards. So when you contact your vendor and you tell them, hey, I've received a bundle that really doesn't look up to my standard, or hey, I received this many bundles that really didn't pass my inspection because of this, the ends look really, really dead. What do you recommend? Some vendors may come back and say, I recommend you just cutting off the ends and sending it out that way. I do want to let you know that you have to love your business, and you have to be the voice and the backbone of your business, if that makes sense. And so even if your vendor is telling you to do something, it doesn't mean that you necessarily have to do it. If a vendor is telling you to cut off 26-inch bundles that you've received up to even 24 inches, that's not what you ordered. That's not what you paid for. So you have to be able to negotiate and figure out, okay, if I do this, the hair is going to look different when I send it out. It's going to look cut straight across, and I don't know how the rest of the hair is going to be. Yes, I cut off the ends. They don't look dead anymore, but I still am not comfortable with these bundles. If you're not comfortable with them, don't send them out, because like I said before, you're going to be the one that has to answer to your customers. It's going to be your reputation on the line. People really don't know who your vendor is. They don't know who you're buying hair from. They just know your company. Just like when you go in and you purchase tennis shoes from a store, you're not really concerned about who's making the shoe too much. You're just looking at that brand. You're looking at the Nike sign or the Jordan sign, or those are my kids' favorite shoes. So I'm just mentioning that, but you know what I mean? Like, that's what we're looking at. We're looking at the brand. And so we have to keep in mind that that's what our customers are looking at too. And sometimes we have to take losses in business. I know a lot of people don't like talking about that, but taking losses is definitely a part of business. I'd rather take a loss out of my pocket than take the risk of sending out something that's not up to my quality or up to my standard to one of my customers and giving them a bad impression of my company and my brand. So sometimes you have to kind of pick your battles, and you have to do everything that you can do to protect your business and your brand. But you also have to realize that part of business is taking losses. I would rather not send out hair that's not up to my standard, like I mentioned, then send it out and have my customers dissatisfied with my service or my product. There has been hair that I've received from vendors, and I've literally thrown away the whole batch because it just was not up to my standard. I literally did that. Like, I took the hair and I threw it away. And so sometimes you have to make those decisions. The next thing and the last thing that I want to go over is, don't be afraid to ask for a manager or the owner. Even if you're working with someone, say you're working with a company and, they're a bigger company and they have multiple people working, you typically have the person that you're working with. But it's not just, one person primarily running the company. Don't be afraid to ask for the manager. Don't be afraid to ask for the owner, because a lot of times the owner and the managers will do things and will go above and beyond further than what some of the workers will do, just because it's their business, it's their brand, it's their, it's their baby, and they want to make sure that they're keeping business, and they should want to make sure that they're keeping you happy, especially if you're a frequent customer. Even if you're not a frequent customer, it could be your first time purchasing, but if they do understand business, they understand the importance of making sure that everyone's happy and satisfied. And so I would also take pictures and use that to explain the difference too. If you have pictures of previous bundles, which you should, because you should be taking pictures to advertise and promote, then I would take pictures and kind of compare them to the batch that you received that you're not really thrilled about, and let them kind of see, hey, this is what I received a few weeks ago. This is what I received now, and it's just not consistent. This is not acceptable. So what can we do? And like I said, if there's nothing that they can do, then at the least, at least you received information and confirmation that this is not the vendor that you want to work with. This is not a vendor that's going to rectify issues And, you should have a plan B. You should have another vendor that you can go to. Like I said, you are going to be out of the money, but it is an unfortunate part of business. So I really hope that this video helped. If you have any questions, feel free to leave them down below. Thanks so much for watching, and I will see you all in my next video. Bye.